Okay, we are back with the second part of this handout. We are now going to take a look at the 30, 60, 90 special right triangle. Again, in order to use this chart method and for the special right triangles, not only do you have to have right angles, for this shortcut, what's supposed to be a shortcut, you need 45, 45, 90 or 30, 60, 90 inside as your angle measures. So we're going to do some examples with the 30, 60, 90. We're going to take a look at number 4 first. In number 4, they have a 60 degrees and 90 degrees and a missing spot. If you were to add up the two parts that we know, 60 and the 90, and subtract from 180, you know, or you're going to find that that equals 30 degrees. So how we use this chart, we're going to have our angles across the top row. Well, this triangle has 30, 60, 90. You need to put them from smallest to biggest. 30, 60, 90 degrees. All right, there is a shortcut or a formula that you had in your notes from the last video to help you do this pretty much mentally, but I'm going to show you how to fill out the chart in order to be able to kind of get some of your thoughts on paper. This is a new topic, and so it might be helpful for you just to try it out. All right, so 30, 60, 90. Those are your angles. And for this chart method or the box method, you're now going to write your rule across the middle row. It's different than the other one. So how we're going to write this is 1 square root of 3 and 2. And I know these look like crazy numbers, but we have the calculator and you're allowed to use decimals and you can rely on the calculator. So please don't worry about that. That's just a ratio. It's a rule that somebody found out how the side lengths relate to each other. It allows you to find some more things. So in this picture, in number 4, we have an X, a Y, and a 5. The 5, the side length, is actually across from the 30 degrees. So just like before, you're going to go find that angle measure of 30, and you're going to like slide down. And in the last row, which is our answer row, aka it represents the side lengths, we're going to put a 5. So we need to figure out the rest of these spaces. One of them is X and one of them is Y. And so the same idea applies to this. When we move to the right, you're going to multiply, and when we move to the left, you're going to divide. The one thing I am asking you not to do, because it gets messy, is do not, please, go between the 60 and the 90 degree columns. Okay, I'm going to say that one more time. Please do not go between the 60 and the 90 degree columns. Neither of these numbers here is 1, so trying to figure out the math, how do you get from 2 to square root of 3 is really messy and it's unnecessary. And so you see that we do have a 1 over here, and it's really easy to figure out, like, what do we divide by to get 1, and what do we multiply by to get a certain number. 1 is just an easier number in multiplication. So in this one, we're going to call 30, it's almost like our home base row. We either want to hopefully start there, and if we aren't given the number that's across from the 30, we want to go there first. So I'm going to call this our home base. That's like what we want to figure out first if we don't already have it. So it was given to us, so now we're going to figure out the other ones. So in this case, we're going to go from the first space, the first missing space, and we're going to try to figure out how to get the second missing space, which happens to be across from the 60. So if we are trying to go from the first to the second space, we're going to bump up a row like we've been doing, and you're asking yourself, how do you get from 1 to square root of 3? And again, you are multiplying because you're moving to the right. 1 times something is that something. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 10 is 10. 1 times a million is a million. So 1 times the square root of 3 gets you the square root of 3. So you are looking to this as like, I want to get here, I have to multiply by this. So you are timesing by the square root of 3. So you could leave this as 5 times the square root of 3, or 5 root 3, or in your calculator, like I've been saying, you can type it out and you can get this number, and they're going to be crazy numbers, but you would have to round, and you can change this to 8.7. I'm going to write that in here as well. 8.7. It's another option of an answer. All right, so here's the deal. We can't go from the 60 degree to the 90 degree, we cannot go between the 60 degree column and the 90 degree column. I asked you not to do that. It's unnecessary math. And so I'd rather you just go from the first column, which we know, and you're going to bump over, try to figure out how to get from the 30 degree spot all the way over here to the 90. Well, if we're trying to get from the first to the last, we bump up 1 row and we look at the rule. How do you get from 1 to 2 via multiplication? And so you're gonna multiply by 2, because 1 times 2 gets you that 2. And so this should be a little bit easier, because 5 times 2 is just 10. All right, that 30 to 90 degree rule is always gonna be multiplied by 2 to get there. And so we have our answers. We have a 5 root 3, which is AKA 8.7, and a 10. So we go back up to the picture, and the X is across from the 60. So you take a look at the 60 degree column, slide down, and I would accept for you to write 5 root 3 or 8.7. And then the other one, the Y is across from the 90 degree box, and so you go to 90 degree column and you get 10, and so Y is going to be 10. And they have these answer lines here for you, and you can just fill that in. So I'm going to leave it in the root, but again, you could choose 10, and then I'm also going to write that out just to clarify. All right, so there's our answer for number 4. And that is how you do your chart for the 30, 60, 90. So I'd like to do a few more for this one. And we're going to take a look at number 5. Number 5 says that we have 30, 90, and so you do some math and you figure out that there is a 60 in there. We're going to write these angles from smallest to biggest across the top row, and then we're going to write the rule across the second row. That hasn't changed. That's exactly what we wrote in the first 2 over here as well. And now we're going to fill in what's going to be the side lengths or the answer row. And that's the most important. So let's fill in what we do know. We have an X, a Y, and a 14. So this row is representing all the numbers that are sides, aka numbers on the outside of the triangle. This 14 is across from the 30 degrees. So again, this is another example where we're starting knowing like our home base. So the 14 is going to go in the 30 degree column. We want to move to the right. When you are moving to the right in this chart, you are going to multiply. So if we want to go from the first space to the second space, and if you could take a look at my hands, you see that the first space and we want to go to the second space, you're going to bump up a row and you want to go and use this rule. How do you get from 1 to square root of 3? Well, 1 times 5 is 5, 1 times 10 is 10, 1 times a million is a million, 1 times square root of 3 is the square root of 3. So we want to multiply by this number, square root of 3. And again, you can rewrite this as 14 times the square root of 3, or you could type it into your calculator as 14 times the square root of 3 and get a decimal. And that's okay if you leave this as 24.2. I would accept that as well. All right, we said that you cannot go between these last 2 columns, so that means we come back to the first and we now need to go to the last. All right, so how do we get from the first space to the last space? Bump up a row, look at the rule. What times 1 gets you 2? Well, it's times the 2. So 14 times 2 is going to get you what goes in that last spot, which is going to be a 28. We now filled out all of our answers, and we just have to formally answer which one's X and which one's Y. So we go back up to the picture, and 30 with the 14, we already knew that. The X is across from the 90. Go to the 90 degree column. X is going to be 28. And the Y is across from the 60. And so you're going to get 14 root 3, aka 24.2. And the reason why people leave things in the radical is because it's actually more accurate if you round your, like skewing the number a little bit. So when it comes to important things like measurements of bridges and whatnot, construction, it really does matter that you don't round. But because we're doing this, I'm okay if you just use the calculator. So those are our answers for number 5. It looks like that. And I'm gonna move right along. We didn't do all the examples yet. We only had examples where we started with the 30 column. So I want to do one where we start with the 60 and one that we start with the 90 degree side. All right, so we're gonna move right along. We're gonna do number 6. Number 6. Number 6 has a 30 and a 90, and this is an understood 60 that we're gonna put in there. If we didn't have 30, 60, 90, you cannot use this rule. You can't use the box. And so 30, 60, 90, these are all degrees. The next row is the rule, 1 square root of 3, 2. And then the last row, which is the side lengths, aka our answers. We have to go to the picture. X, Y, and 32. The 32 is across from the 90 degrees. So we go to the 90 degree column, and now we need to write in our 32. So we're actually starting all the way on the right, which means we need to go to the left. I was saying before that our 30 column is our home base. Like if we weren't given this in the beginning of the problem, then we want to go there first. So when we go to the left, we're gonna divide. Okay, it's just the opposite. You go to the right, you multiply. You go to the left, you divide. So if we're going to the left, we're dividing. We want to go from the last space here, if you look at my hands, to the first space. So bump up a row, and we want to go from 2 to 1. Well, via division, how do you get from 2 divided by what gets you 1? Well, in math, anything divided by itself gets you 1. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. That is the rule. We now need to apply that to the next row. So we need to divide by 2. 32 divided by 2 is going to get us 16. Nice, pretty number. And so we're going to put that in there. All right, you cannot go between the 60 and the 90. I've been saying that. Please don't do it. You're going to now have to go from the 30 degree to the right to get you the 60. So we're now moving to the right, which means you're going to multiply. Well, you want to go from the first to the second, and so we bump up a row. We look at the rule. How do you go from 1 to square root of 3? You are going to multiply by the square root of 3. So we are timesing 16 times the square root of 3. I'm going to continue to give you that answer in decimal form. 16 times the square root of 3, 27.7. All right, so that's how you do this. These are our answer. This last row is our answer row. We go back to the picture, and we figure out what goes with what. All right, so the y is across from the 60. So we go to the 60 degree column, and we get 16 root 3 for the y, which we also said could be 27.7. That's just in decimal form. And then the x is across from the 30 degrees, so you come over and you look at the 30 degree column, slide down, and for x you're going to get 16. And that's how you do that.